The depth of hatred directed at men in the media is truly astounding. Even in 2009, during a global economic recession, women are apparently the most affected. But can this really be true?
Hello, I'm Mary Honeybull. I'm a British MEP. I'm from London. The recession is hitting women more than men. I mean, we certainly know that in the UK, and I think it's the same across Europe. So it's very important that the Women's Rights Committee discusses this matter.
The rates of suicide increased during recession, and it's men by far that were affected most. While women dye their hair blonde, men simply die. Men already commit suicide at 4 times the rate of women.
In particular, young men who the suicide rates have risen for, sort of more significantly than you would have expected over the last 20 years.
It's actually more than the last 20 years. The sustained increase in male suicides has been apparent since 1970, whereas female suicides have decreased over the same time.
In harsh economies, men suffer more because of the additional burden that men have in supporting their families, a burden that women rarely have, and that women are not expected to have.
There's a perception of men as being stronger and more able to deal with things, whereas it's more natural for women to express their feelings and to be the ones that say, I can't cope, I need help. Whereas in our society today, still very much there is this, men are supposed to be the strong, silent ones who can cope and just carry on, and it's difficult to get beyond that, and to perhaps say, no, I do need help,
But in news stories about suicide, the fact that men suffer more is ignored. The word men is simply not mentioned.
When homelessness is discussed, all kinds of minor statistics may be analysed on the news, but never the most obvious fact that over 90% of the homeless are men.
The biggest ever survey into homelessness in Britain, published today, shows as many as a quarter of rough sleepers are over 50. Many of them are parents, but 3/4 of them have no next of kin.
You've only got to look at all of our public services that absolutely fall over themselves, with their equalities officers and their ethnic minority officers and all these people. They always seem to put a little line around men, and they, for some reason, are left out of it, and it's perverse.
Male suicide figures in prison, nationwide, amounts to 97% of the total. But when the BBC tells us about prison suicides, women are actually the most affected. A higher proportion. So if you had 1,000 men on a battlefield and 2 women, after the day's battle 400 men are killed and 1 woman. You can see the formula the BBC would use to report this. Of the 4,000 police officers that have been killed in the line of duty in the UK, 3,956 of them are men, 44 are women. 99% of deaths are police men, but in the media, police women are given the same prominence as men. Pictures of 2 women and 2 men are shown, as if the figures are somehow even, as if police women are in anything like as much danger as men.
Fully half the story is about these 44 women, out of 4,000 dead.
The killings of these police men are hidden behind the word officer. The same thing happens with military servicemen, firemen and workmen. When they die on duty or at work, their sex is disguised behind gender-neutral descriptions which hide the fact that men are the most affected.
This gender neutrality in job titles is not there to be fair to women. It's there to be unfair to men.
You're not becoming a fireman.
Firefighter, not fireman.
Tell me something. Why don't they call you guys Officer S's?
I beg your pardon?
Like actress.
I guess they feel that a police officer is a police officer.
This has to be recognised as one of the triumphs of feminism, the near-complete media suppression of the fact that the overwhelming majority of tragic deaths, in all professions, are male.
The author Noam Chomsky examined this phenomenon and described it as a concept of worthy and unworthy victims. Men are not worthy of sympathy, they're only worthy of blame.
We often hear that women find pornography degrading, and that many women resent being depicted as sex objects by men.
All of a sudden, the guy at the donut shop is totally hitting on me. It's like, now that I'm blonde, he assumes I'm easy. sex toy? That's what the guy in the donut shop called me!
We won't go into what men should regard as sex objects if not women, but what's the image of men that we universally see depicted? I would say death objects.
But I can't stand cowardice. I remember a soldier at Inkerman when a Cossack charged down on him. I saw a man raise his musket, fumble with his trigger, and then turn and run. The Cossack's lance went in at the back of his neck and came out in his throat. Best thing that could have happened to him.
Men are casually and graphically killed on screen at an awesome rate. But when women are killed, it's typically off-screen.
You were warned, Lorraine. The money goes up to John.
A man's life is so worthless, he commits suicide without hesitation.
Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Andrew Markinson, United States Marine Corps.
And when he commits suicide, he still can't win.
The real reason that Walt took the coward's way out was because he disgraced himself.
When a woman commits suicide, does it even occur to us to think of her as a coward?
Two recent major Hollywood films portray men who believe that they can do the most good for others by committing suicide. Men are graphically mutilated, beaten and tortured.
Every person that's taken money from you.
You fucking stupid fuck, what? Your time is up. Fuck! You're P.O. Give me the fucking names!
But women are never shown to be tortured, and rarely shown to be injured.
And women are never killed as a form of comedy.
Marvin, what do you make of all this?
Man, I don't even have an opinion.
Well, you gotta have an opinion. I mean, do you think that God came down from heaven and stopped Oh,
what the fuck's happening?
Oh, man, man. Oh, man, I shot Marvin in the face.
Why the fuck you do that?
Well, I didn't mean to do it. It was an accident.
Yeah.
Stick around.
I'm gonna make this pencil disappear.
Ta-da!
It's gone.
You go listen to yourself. The numbers are cursed. You know there is no such thing as a...
All right, we're not going to take any more of this stuff than we need because nitroglycerin is extremely temperamental. So we just...
In film after film, we see how men are only worthwhile if they're protectors of women and unpaid bodyguards. They're only heroes if they risk life and limb to save others, particularly women.
Thanks for saving me, tough guy.
We even have a film that spells out men's worth as clear as day. On our screens, women hit men regularly and with impunity, and the men always deserve it.
She is definitely feisty. She takes no nonsense from the guys, and she gives one of them a Glasgow kiss tonight.
Does she?
Yeah.
And does he deserve it?
I think so.
Oh, Mia.
Oh.
Now, Maybe that's in a language you'll understand.
You wanker!
No!
God! Fuck you, you arsehole!
I'm sick of getting punched by you cluster fucking nuss bitches. What would happen if I punched one of you, eh?
Just try it! No!
In fact, that is for giving me a really horrible, miserable day. And this, that is for calling me thing and it.
Oh.
I am a doctor.
Prove it. Stitch this, mate.
Oh, how can I help you? I'm Roy.
Well, here I am!
Here in The Incredibles, in the entire film, men get hit by men and women, but none of the female characters are struck.
Hey, look.
Whatever happened to ladies first?
Well, whatever happened to equal treatment?
Hey, look, wait. The lady got me first.
Even a boy can be hit by an adult, but never a woman. In our cartoons, girls are taught that it's absolutely okay to hit boys, and they'll never hit back.
What's a mouse pad? Feminine protection for mice.
I saved you. Do I get a wish?
Jerk! Let me try.
Hey there, baby. Yeah, whatever.
I mean it! I mean it!
Ah!
I never made a man cry. I even kicked a guy in the groin once and he didn't cry. I got the cat.
I haven't actually seen the Chippendales, and I can't think of anything worse than sitting staring at some bloke's crotch for 2 hours. Unless, of course, it belonged to Judge Pickles and it was in a liquidator, but...
Women and men will frequently laugh at scenes of male castration or any damage to the male groin. Most comedy films, particularly Hollywood films, will have the obligatory shot of a man hitting the balls, or worse.
Go on, chest it!
Who said anything about killing you?
Hi, little girl. What do you want for Christmas? Oh.
Sweet mother!
One extramarital, and I'll cut it off.
Hey, Tommy, heads up!
Solar plexus, instep, nose, point!
Let the woman go. You are under arrest.
And take away his weapon. Both of them.
But there simply isn't any depiction of violence against female genitalia, ever. Sexual violence against men on screen is entertainment, but against women it's always serious, and is said to promote misogyny and violence against women. What does sexual violence against men promote? Well, for some, it leads to TV fame.
Our next guest is a woman who's famous around the world for literally taking the law into her own hands. It's my pleasure to welcome Lorena Bobbitt. Welcome. This is your first appearance on British television, and millions of viewers join me in wanting to know the answer to one question. Cut any good dicks lately?
Have you ever seen or heard of a man mutilating a vagina? And if you have, would you expect to see them laughing about it on a talk show?
To me, one of the most astonishing things is that men do not get uptight over the fact that they will be laughed at. If I was to be found in the street tomorrow morning with my penis cut off down the road, I would be laughed at. I am so worthless because I'm a male that I would be laughed at. The media would make jokes about me, there'd be jokes, and men would be doing it too. Men have no idea that that some part of themselves, if you like, is missing. They simply don't consider it.
In the Clint Eastwood film Unforgiven, 9 men are shot dead, 2 men beaten, and 1 man whipped to death to avenge the facial injuries inflicted on one woman. Film after film was produced out of Hollywood. Women in danger films with men dying like flies to keep her safe or avenge her honour. Here in The Shield, a suspected rapist is cornered.
Send him. Take him!
Should I call him back?
Not yet.
Call the dog back?
This guy raped 5 women. 2 today.
They used a police dog to subdue him. Ruptured one of his testicles. They say dogs are a good judge of character.
Of the hundreds of men killed or maimed on our screens every week, practically all of them are shown to have deserved it in some way. There seems to be 101 reasons why a man might deserve to die, and not a single reason why a woman might deserve it.
You're safe now. He's not going to hurt you anymore.
Here, a drunk driver who killed a child is gunned down by a grieving family member. Can you imagine a storyline with a female drunk driver killed? In the film 88 Minutes, a woman commits multiple murders, but the writers want to tell us that she only did it under the influence of a man.
You seize on a naive junior lawyer on your legal staff. You realize that she's damaged kids, psychologically impaired. It's genius, isn't it? Susceptible to your crap, so what do? You get her to kill people for you.
We now live in a society where everyone except men belongs to a protected group. Disabled people, gays, blacks, Jews, Muslims, old people, fat people, red-haired people, the vertically challenged, and of course, women. The list of groups worthy of protection goes on.
Infected by political correctness. You cannot speak your mind because you are deemed to be offending people. And the only people you can offend with impunity are men, particularly white, heterosexual men. You've got everything of those, that everything is stacked against you.
After Beslan and other terrorist incidents, there was media concern that there may be an unfair backlash against Muslims.
With hundreds of people killed, there's now a backlash against the country's 20 million Muslims.
Today, people are directing all their anger and all their frustration at the entire Muslim community.
So does it not follow that if the misbehaviours of relatively few men are relentlessly highlighted and exaggerated, that there might be an unfair backlash against all men?
Maria says she spends the bus journey to work keeping an eye out for suicide bombers.
When I enter bus, I can't help thinking about terrorists, so I have to look attentively at everybody around me.
Women seem to understand the danger of constantly being associated with something negative. Women even objected to the tradition of naming hurricanes with women's names. If relentless public messages didn't affect our perceptions and our behaviour, there'd be no such thing as advertising. By continually casting men in the role of paedophile, wife-beater, rapist, criminal, death object, terrorist, stalker, idiot and absent father, how can there not be a backlash? In our supposedly male-dominated society, men are effectively restricted in their choice of employment due to misandry. And so it's very difficult for a man to become a primary school teacher without experiencing some kind of problem.
Yeah, well I know with one of my nephews, he went into childcare and he had a real tough time of it in his lessons because it was all girls and they used to accuse him of being a paedophile and all sorts of things.
So easy, isn't it?
And if they did like nappy changing, a woman had to supervise him in case he did anything wrong. I think that's well out of order. Totally out of order.
Another consequence of demonising men on our screens is even more destructive.
80 men kill themselves every week in the UK, and male suicides account for more than 75% of the total. Whereas female suicides have steadily reduced since 1970, male suicides have steadily increased.
From the late 70s and early 80s, there was a huge increase amongst suicides. The age group of men between, I think, 24 and 35 is one of the highest groups, which is quite unnatural, you know, that normally you would expect it to be older men who were sort of at high risk, whereas now it's becoming younger men. And although although rates haven't risen for the last 10 years or so, the fact that they have stabilised kind of demonstrates that there has been a change for some reason that we don't fully understand. So it kind of went like that, and it's sort of, that level has, it seems as if it's peaked, it's not going back down, but we're still in this level where since the 70s more young people are taking their own lives than you would expect.
It's on the increase. And
It's
I'm
still
not
on the increase compared with female suicide.
And I'm not surprised.
What do you think is going on? Why would more and more young men be committing suicide?
Well, you've probably got a whole range of different things. I mean, it's the social pressures on young men that are making them feel bad about themselves anyhow. You've got family breakdown, which affects boys quite adversely. Domestic violence is probably another cause of it. A whole range of things. I mean, we've had 3 cases ourselves of men committing suicide because of domestic violence. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I wouldn't like to think how many men actually kill themselves because of domestic violence. You know, you keep hearing about the 2 women are killed every week, and they don't mention the fact that in actual fact 30-odd men are killed every year by their wives as well. But how many more are actually committing suicide?
You know, they talk to me about how 2 women are killed every week in England by their partners. 1 man is killed, but they don't account for the 3 who commit suicide every week. I know those men, and I know why they kill themselves.
One that Samaritans is particularly interested in is suicide in the media, and the strategy seeks to inform journalists about the way in which portrayals of suicide in the media can affect vulnerable people's behaviour. For example, there was an incident in the 90s where in Casualty there was a paracetamol overdose suicide attempt, and suicide attempts using that method went up by 17% in the week following the broadcast of that programme, and there was a direct link between people who'd seen the programme and who had then gone on to take their own life in that way, and who had chosen to take their own life as a consequence of that programme.
Regarding the increase in the use of paracetamol to attempt suicide following the Casualty broadcast, is that seen as a causal factor, or just they happened to choose that method and they were going to take their own lives anyway?
It's a causal factor.
You see it as
There is the research that is done around this is quite interesting, because I get asked that a lot. You know, is it an absolute increase that it caused, or was it just a change in the methods? And it wasn't that factor it wasn't that example that got analysed in that way, but there was another one which was called where a German TV show showed, it was called Death of a Student, and every week at the starting credits they showed a man being run over by a train, killing himself by being run over by a train, and suicide attempts using that method increased, but also the number of suicides increased, you know, following it, showing that it wasn't just people choosing that method, it had contributed to an actual overall increase in suicide, in the suicide rates. It's a difficult thing for most people to kind of grasp, that actually, you know, something on TV could have a real and direct effect, but it really does, and positive reporting can totally save lives.
So if the portrayal of suicide can lead to an increase in suicides, what does the portrayal of male disposability cause?
What are the real-world effects of the continual killing, beating, suicide and sexual violence against men in our media? But we don't seem to recognise prejudice as even a possibility with men, because men, for some reason, are not considered to be a distinct group. That's why here in the Shield, for example, male prostitutes are called hustlers instead of prostitutes.
Got gay bashers going after male hustlers out on the stroll.
Calling them hustlers lends the men some kind of control over their situation, like it's their chosen career. Whereas with women, they are prostitutes, innocent victims of vicious pimps.
They're the same, yet we call it differently.
In our private lives, it's men who walk women to their cars or front doors at night. It's men who investigate the noise downstairs in the middle of the night.
What was that?
I'm going. If I'm killed, don't forget to return the videos. They're a day late.
It's your sense of humour I'll miss the most.
And it's men who rush to the defence of any woman in danger.
Don't touch me, all right?
Everything okay, Miss Donovan?
Lucas, do you mind walking me back inside?
Take a walk, pal.
You're being paranoid.
Have you ever walked or driven a woman home to make sure she gets there safely?
Yeah.
Yeah, all the time, yeah. So well, not recently, but obviously, you know, when I was playing the field or whatever you want to call it. And
what's the point of taking her home?
Well, I took this girl home this morning because I didn't see any other way of her getting home. I didn't want her in my flat.
You've done it in order to make sure she gets home safe.
Yeah, I think it's sort of
this
thing
is my
to
point.
do. Yeah.
When you've done that for her, what about your safety when you're getting home?
The people most at risk from violence and death on our streets are men. Men come to harm 3 times more often than women. And these are innocent men minding their own business on their way home.
Amazingly, considering society's indifference to male safety, it even says this on the Crime Stoppers website. Despite the glaringly obvious fact that men are in greater danger, that twice as many men are murdered and 3 times as many assaulted in the UK, we instead focus on danger to females. Every advert, every poster, every public information film, every parliamentary debate, every BBC documentary, and the overwhelming majority of government funding goes towards the safety and well-being of women.
Winnie cab, love.
Last, how much is it to Balham? If you want to know the true cost, ask a rape victim. 10 sexual assaults are committed in London every month.
This bunch of women have actually set up a group of pink cabs where it's only driven by women and only for female passengers. And I thought, how many men would get away from setting up blue cabs driven by men only, for men only?
But I mean, the argument there would be safety for women, because, you know...
Or safety for men? Is it safe for a man to pick a woman up? But I find that offensive. I have to say that. I mean, my son used to find it offensive when he used to be at Plymouth University and they'd run late night buses and they weren't always full, but only for women to get on, not the blokes. Blokes could walk through the streets and a bloke could easily be set about by some drunkard and have his head smacked in, but the buses were only laid on for the girls. And the bus would pull away, perhaps with just half full with girls, and the blokes would have to walk. Yeah.
So the implication is, you know, the fact that you're a man is the problem.
Mm,
not anything
exactly. Yeah. You're of lesser worth.
Hard being a man today. Hard being a man today. Why is it so hard to be a man? Because nobody cares about men. Nobody gives a fuck about men. If you see a homeless man on the street with a dog, you feel sorry for the dog. So we got to get that dog some food. What about the man? Oh, fuck him. So every night on TV, I see there's a new missing woman. We gotta find Carol. Where's Carol? We must find Carol. Carol didn't come home last night. Where the fuck is Carol? I never see one of these things for a missing man yet. It's like Bob didn't come home last night. Good. I hope he never comes home.
When you compare the men's and women's pages on Crime Stoppers, misandry once again rears its ugly head. On the women's page, everything is about concern for female victims and the blamelessness of women. What does this really mean, anyway? What do you think the response would be if a woman requested a white officer because the criminal was black?
Well, that's not on. She'd be a racist, right? For lumping all black people together. But why is it okay to treat all men as criminals?
Look, Brenda, would you rather have a female investigator in here? Would that make you more comfortable?
I wasn't raped, if that's what you're driving at.
What if a woman is raped by a black guy? Can she ask for a white officer? Or perhaps a white female officer? Would a black female officer do? What if she was raped by a black man that looked like a woman? What could she ask for then? The men's page on Crime Stoppers is very different.
Men are advised to change their behaviour to reduce their risk. Even when men are victims of crime, they're responsible.
And again on the men's page, a page that's meant to inform men of their vastly greater danger on our streets, Crime Stoppers has advice for men on how to reduce women's fear of crime. And what if she strikes up a conversation with a man? Should he turn and run to avoid causing her any distress? What should men do? Walk in reverse? Walk in the road with traffic? Perhaps men should just stand still. No, men can't stand still. That's loitering, and it might scare a female. How far does her personal space extend? Can she order me out of her train carriage? Can she tell me to leave town?
Elena? I can't go within 1,000 feet of her.
In Japan, a woman can order a man out of her carriage.
Why don't we just go ahead and have apartheid and be done with it? You know, why don't we just have certain buildings, if they want to do that, and put, you know, no men admitted because you're a man, and you can have cars and buses, you can have restaurants and all that, and you can have women-only zones if you want, and then just keep us out, be done with it. And let's have the act put in and be done with it, and we know where we stand.
All of this advice constitutes a hate crime against men that would not be tolerated if directed at any other group of people.
We're okay, Anne. We don't need any help. We don't keep cash in the store.
If Crime Stoppers told black men not to walk too closely behind women, it would be illegal. If they told Jewish men to respect women's personal space, it would be illegal. If red-haired men were asked not to speak to a woman on their own, it would be illegal. And of course, if women were given any advice whatsoever as regards their normal behaviour, it would be considered sexist and illegal. And nowhere on Crime Stoppers are there warnings for men regarding their vulnerability to false accusations from women of sexual assault and rape that accounts for over 40% of all such allegations.
The others, not to mention the fuss.
I haven't done anything.
Oh, who's going to believe that? I've only got to rip off my shirt.
Oh, blimey. There.
Tuck down my jeans.
No, wait a minute. Can we just talk about
and
this?
rip off my pants.
Now, wait a minute.
Crime Stoppers, just like so many other agencies, is free to spread hatred against men without compunction.
Women are at barely any risk in our society compared to men, and women know it. So why is the picture painted that women are so vulnerable?
Look at the way women dress themselves when they go out on the town. This is not the way people dress when they're afraid. If these women were afraid, they'd be dressed in jeans and trainers and would be covered up. They'd be prepared to run at the slightest cause. Martial arts classes would be chock full of women. The reality is that barely any women train in martial arts. Why would they learn to defend themselves when the risk of attack is so low?
Women seem relatively small and weak, but weak is not the same as vulnerable, although people tend to confuse the two.
Be careful about how drunk they let themselves get in London, because it's not the world it used to be. Why can't somebody speak to guys and say, you know, that's really immoral?
Why doesn't somebody speak to women and say to them, you are weaker, you are vulnerable, and you need to be careful, because if any one of us is going to get hurt, it's going to be you.
Do you think that a woman is more vulnerable than a man to violent street crime?
Yeah. Well, naturally they're weaker, aren't they? They're naturally weaker, and you know, the most violent street crimes committed by guys, isn't it?
So you've taken your gun home, you made sure she's safe, and so you did that.
I think in general, men are supposed to be stronger, and they're supposed to be able to look after themselves. Yeah, I never wanted Michelle to walk down a certain road at one point. Do you know what I mean? Because I thought, well, I wouldn't want her to do that. So I'd go and pick her up from the station.
Would you walk down that same road?
Of course I would, yeah. Because I feel more confident within myself that I'd make it from A to B.
Why do you feel more confident?
Because
you're stronger.
Yeah. And it's very unlikely that someone's going to mess with me, then they're going to mess with her. Do you know what I mean? Because she's a female and she's weak. And I'm not saying...
She's laughing, that is true, it's true.
But the Queen is female and she's weak.
She's
got bodyguards everywhere, what are you talking about?
The point I'm making is, the fact that someone is female and weak doesn't make them vulnerable to attack.
It makes them more vulnerable to attack.
No, it means that if they got attacked, they'd be able to do less about it. It doesn't make them more vulnerable.
Yeah, because
if I saw a big black man, and a little teeny woman, I'd rather go and beat up a little teeny woman than a big black man.
Would you really, though?
I wouldn't beat anybody up.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is...
But men look for easy prey.
It stands to reason it's like a jackal or a hyena, you know, they're not going to go after the fit lion, are they? They're going to go after the maimed, dying old beast and chew its head off, you know. I mean, I'm not saying women are old, dying, maimed beasts, but this is natural. It's, you know, it's easier. It's easy going for a woman.
That's not entirely true, because most crime is committed against men, not against women.
Yeah, but that's
probably because you're looking after your women.
that's probably because men are more likely to be out in the street late at night than women are.
That's exactly the
point.
Know what I mean?
So it's about percentages.
But actually, men are more vulnerable. Oh, no. In terms of being out on the street late, I think both sexes are out on the street late. But it says to me the women tends to get a walk home, and then there's a guy by himself.
So he's done the walk twice, basically.
The point I'm making is you would say that you feel less vulnerable
it doesn't matter if you're more likely to come to harm than Michelle would be, but you still feel stronger.
Yeah.
So, in light of that fact,
Yeah.
do you still think that women are more vulnerable than men to violent street crime?
Yeah, I think they are. Yeah, of course they are. They're still vulnerable, but obviously, you know, perhaps doesn't happen to them as much.
Fundamentally, it seems, men value themselves less than women. They refuse to accept that they're more vulnerable to harm, and behave accordingly.
I know statistics there, and I know that most victims of street crime are men. It's inflicted by men on men. I think that comes from it's less about the actual fact of the matter and more about an act of chivalry. It's just a matter of how you want to treat women. I like to be protective towards women, so I am, even knowing that I'm more vulnerable than women are when it comes to walking down the street.
If danger in society was about how small and weak you were, then virtually all muggings, assaults and murders would be perpetrated against children.
Hiya, pal.
But this doesn't happen, not only because there's no desire in adults to attack children, but also because, just like women, children can count on the protection of everyone around them. Men have no such protection.
Women raising a hand to a man in a public house in every part of the UK on a Friday night, the pub will cheer. But if a man hits a woman, the pub will explode, and 99% of the time will attack the man.
Because of the perceived vulnerability of women, vehicle rescue companies prioritise lone women for breakdown assistance. Women have no right to be prioritised, because pretty much the only thing women are in danger of, if they break down by themselves on a dark and lonely night, is being helped by about 20 men before official help even gets there.
We absolutely screeched to a halt. We got out, having trouble, like, yeah, I'm trying to change my tyre. We all went away with black cans. It was like a pit stop change, you know what I mean? We had to wheel off, we had to wheel on, had it all jacked up. We went away with filthy black cans. We was really pleased we'd helped her. If that had been a bloke there, we'd have driven past him. You know that, don't you?